Good evening. Welcome to our stress, family, and food workshop. I'm glad you are with us tonight. For those that couldn't be here live, there will be a replay. So let's just jump right in. First, I want to talk a little bit about stress and some other words that we can use for stress that might help you identify that you actually do have some stressors or that you're under stress. I know I always say, I don't feel stressed. But some other words that we can use kind of help me reframe how I think that I'm feeling. And those words are things like worry, anxiety, preoccupation, or all-consuming. So when we think about stress, don't just think about like, oh, yeah, I feel fine. I'm not stressed. Think about, am I preoccupied? Are there things that are all-consuming on my mind? Am I anxious about something? Those are things that also allude to having stress. So I'm going to jump in and share my screen with you and hopefully not be all over the place with this because I have a lot of notes here in front of me. And so I'll look down a little bit. That's what I'm doing. And I want to try not to go down too many rabbit holes. So stress, family, and food during the holiday season. Always, I hear so many women say, like, the holidays are so stressful, or I just don't know how to handle all the food, or I don't know how to handle family expectations around meals and all that goes into that. So let's dive in and talk about that. So stress affects us during the holidays in lots of ways. Just in general, holidays can be stressful. We might be entertaining. We may have family coming in. We may be visiting family. Work tends to be stressful around the holidays. All the events, the parties, the different things we're expected to go to, the decorating. I don't know about you, but decorating stresses me out. Hosting events, hosting parties, hosting family, being a guest. Like, it's hard to be a guest in someone else's home for any long period of time. All the food. It seems like our holidays revolve around food. And then there's that ever stressful potential weight gain that we don't want to have during the holiday season. So let's talk a little bit about stress and our emotions. So some stress triggers that come up in general, not just at the holiday times, but in general, is we're too busy. This is exacerbated during the holidays because it's such a busy time. And when we think about busyness, I want you to reframe that a little bit and think about what you can control. So a lot of times we're just like, I'm so busy. But the reality is we choose to a large extent how we use our time, what we add to our schedules, and who we answer to. Now, I get it. Sometimes there's a boss or there's like different things that you really don't have much control over. But in general, we can choose. And a lot of times our busyness is because we make the assumptions that certain things are expected of us. And so really evaluate that and let go of some of those expectations. Another thing is unreasonable rules. We set ourselves up to be totally stressed when we set unreasonable rules for ourselves. When we start using words like we should, we need, I have to, or absolutes like always, or never, or every, those are words that should cue us in to maybe we have some unreasonable rules. And think about if a friend says to you, I have to do this and this and this and this. And maybe you're thinking, well, you don't have to do all those things. Like, how would you answer your friend? Chances are you need a friend to say those things to you if having those unreasonable rules is a problem for you. Stress triggers us to use food to feel better. So if we're stressed out about an event coming up, like, we may just start munching. And the reality is that, food might feel good in the moment, but it sets us up for this guilt and shame cycle that so often happens with food that we just don't need. And the other reality is even if it feels good for just a moment, you realize overall it doesn't really help anything. And so being aware of that is the first step to choosing not to go down that path. You may feel like it's just not the right time. There's too many things going on. It's not time to think about taking care of yourself or making time for yourself during the busy season. That, when the holidays are over, then I'll take care of myself. Then I will, sorry about that. Okay. All right, I've just gotten started, so thanks for joining me tonight. And we'll just keep on moving, and you can always catch the replay. Good to have you here. All right, I'm going to just keep going where I left off, and you can catch the beginning on the replay. But let's see, where did I leave off? Okay, the right time. So we may feel like during this busy holiday season, it's not the right time to take care of ourselves. When the reality is, it's the perfect time to start taking care of ourselves, because when we take care of ourselves, we can give to other people in a better state. And so it's always the right time to take care of yourself, especially when it comes to food. Now, let's look at emotional responses to food. Now, stress and emotions can be really intertwined, but there's also a whole host of emotions that really don't have anything to do with stress. It might be, sadness, depression, disappointment. There's lots of emotions that come up, especially around the holidays. So I wanted to address this as well. Sometimes we use food to numb the pain. This often stems back to childhood, where if you hurt yourself, maybe your mom got you a little treat so you'd feel better. Or if you lost a ball game, you went out and celebrated with, or you went out and had a little something special so you wouldn't feel so bad about it. So we've been trained oftentimes from our early childhood to use food to numb pain. The reality is it doesn't numb the pain, kind of like the reality is that it doesn't make you feel better when it's a stress trigger. So having other ways to cope with that, maybe it's needing to deal with something in your past, maybe it's needing to deal with something going on around you. Recognize it for what it is and realize that food is not the answer. Entitlement eating is a crazy little thing that happens when we say to ourselves, I've had such a stressful day that I should treat myself to XYZ. Or I've been so good all day that on the way home from work, I'm going to stop and get myself, something that you think is a special thing at the drive-through or whatever it is. So we get caught up in this, like, because I did something good or because something bad happened, we're entitled to have certain food. And again, the reality is food it's not a reward any more than it's a punishment. So being aware of those emotions and those feelings can help you avoid falling into that trap. Now, things like being bored, tired, procrastinating, I also call it buffering. I'm a good bufferer. When I put off something that I'm trying to work on, I find 400 other things to do. And sometimes we use food to do that. And again, it doesn't help. It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't make us less bored or less tired. And it certainly doesn't help us get things done that we need to get done. So recognizing that we're responding to food in that way because of an emotional response and not a hunger cue is half the battle, just the recognition of it. And one of the handouts that you'll get with this workshop is a hunger cues handout. And I'm going to go ahead, if I can, without screwing anything up. Whoops, not that. I want to share another thing that I printed up. Okay, hopefully you can see this. If not, you'll catch it on the handouts when I send you an email after this with the replay. There's two different kinds of food. I'm sorry, hunger. We have physical hunger and psychological hunger. Now, physical hunger will increase gradually. So say you haven't eaten in 3 hours and you're going to start to feel hungry. That's physical hunger. Psychological hunger is sudden desire for food or the appearance of food makes you hungry. And now with physical hunger, something like an apple would be satisfying. But with psychological hunger, you want something very specific. And it's probably not an apple or fruits and vegetables of any kind. It's probably things like chocolate or chips or, something to satisfy the sweet or the salty or the crunchy, the things we just want when we want food, but we're not actually hungry. Physical hunger says, I can wait to eat. Psychological hunger says, I want food right now. And there's a sense of urgency or panic about that. Physical hunger is a body's, your response to your body's need for food, like your stomach starts to growl. Psychological hunger is the response to feeling bored, stressed, tired, upset, some of those things that we've been talking about with the emotional and stress-related food responses. With physical hunger, we can choose to eat with awareness. With psychological hunger, we eat impulsively, quickly. Maybe we don't even taste it. How many people have, started munching on that bag of chips and all of a sudden the bag's empty? Like you didn't even realize you ate them all. That's not physical hunger. With physical hunger, we feel satisfied after we eat. And with psychological hungry, we always want more. Or maybe, okay, I satisfied the sweet tooth, now I want something crunchy. Like those are not physical hunger signs, that's psychological. And a biggie that happens a lot with women, especially women who have struggled with dieting in the past, is with physical hunger, there's no guilt associated with eating. And with psychological hunger, we often get into this guilt shame cycle where we promise different behavior the next time, and then we just do it all over again. So when we think about our stress triggers and emotional responses to food, being aware that we do them, being aware that they happen, being aware with what triggers us is half the battle. All right, family. And this is going to be this conversation about family. Hope I don't disappoint anyone thinking they were going to have a little family therapy session here, is revolving food and the holidays. Got somebody else joining us. So when we think about our family time around the holidays or, any family functions, we think about the time, the food, the traditions, and possibly travel that's involved. And all of those things impact how we relate to food and other people. All right, so my window is in the way here. Hang on. Okay. Family can put unknowing pressure on us to eat in ways that don't correspond with maybe our goals, maybe what's typical, maybe what is your normal, whatever it is. So when we have extended family issues when it comes to food, here's a few strategies I want to give you. One is decide ahead of time what your boundaries are. And we're going to talk about food guardrails coming up and then in a few more slides, and that will bounce back to this boundary idea. Another thing is have a plan ahead of time. Like if you just know how your mom cooks and you're spending time with your parents or, extended family, plan ahead of time of how you're going to handle that meal. And the other thing is if you're really working on taking care of yourself and trying to be your best self, especially during this busy holiday season and holiday time of year, then just be direct with your family. Ask them to respect the choices that you're making. They don't have to like it. They don't have to participate, but it is not an unrealistic expectation that they respect the choices that you want to make. Now, what about your own family? I hear this a lot from clients and ladies that I've worked with. When they start making changes and healthy habits, their family gives them a lot of pushback. And so how can we navigate that? Because maybe our family or our spouse is not on board with the changes we want to make or the healthy habits we're trying to establish. And again, during this stressful, busy time, you will show up as your best self when you are well-fed, well-rested, and set some really good boundaries. So one is realize that change is hard, but it doesn't mean it isn't good. So if you're getting pushback from your family because it's hard, it's okay. It's still good to be making those changes, and get your family involved in the planning and the cooking of more healthy options. A lot of times, especially if children are involved, if they are helping in the kitchen, they're much more likely to buy into the changes and want to try the new things that you're doing. So don't be afraid to get your family involved. And also just get active together. Something as simple as taking a short walk after a meal can make such a huge impact on your overall health, energy level, digestion, everything about how you're taking care of yourself. So don't be afraid to involve your family and realize that these healthy habits are simply that. They're healthy habits that you're going to be doing. And it's not that you're asking them to do anything unreasonable. All right, food, all the food. So many issues and fears around food, entertaining, family, work events, other events, social events, hosting, being a guest, potential weight gain. Again, these are some of the same things that were on our list for stress, because these are what stress us out, and particularly with food. So let's talk about some food guardrails. I love this topic because it is so practical for so many things. We can talk about this in terms of traveling, holidays, special events, eating out. Anytime that you're not at home and you're not making all the decisions around your food, then these food guardrails can be extremely helpful. And you'll get a handout of the food guardrails in the resources that you'll get after the workshop. So the food guardrails are simply safety parameters that you decide for those occasions when you're not at home that will help you stay on track or help you work toward your goals. Because you decide them, you can set yourself up for success. So let's talk specifically about holidays. And so say you've got a work party on Monday night and an open house on Tuesday night and a family event on Thursday night, and all of a sudden you have all of these times during the season where there's just going to be food everywhere, and you have to decide how you're going to handle that. One, not be stressed out about it. Two, not have any guilt or shame about it. And three, feel in control and feel empowered by the decisions you're going to make. So some examples of food guardrails, and again, this list has to do with all different scenarios, not just holidays, but I will specifically talk about the holiday parties. So this may be what you decide for yourself. I will use a small plate and only get food twice. I will not go back over and over again to the, I'm thinking about, where the food is set out, and I won't just stand and graze. A lot of times at parties, there's either a buffet or there's just food out for people to snack on. So setting some rules around that can help you stay in control and not be stressed out about food. And again, you get to decide if you have one big holiday party, say, one big Thanksgiving meal, and there's not lots of different things going on, you may decide that you're just going to enjoy the day and not worry about it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because one meal is not going to derail you. It's not going to just send you spiraling. It's not going to cause a bunch of weight gain. It's not going to mean that you've, quote unquote, fallen off the wagon. It's just a meal. So, and we're going to go over some other tips and tricks here in just a minute, but you get the idea with the guardrails. You're deciding the rules around how you're going to eat at different occasions. And it may be different for every person, and there's no right or wrong answer. But what you do want to do is decide, be intentional, and then follow through. Because if you decide, you're kind of halfway thinking it's a good idea, and then you get there and you eat everything in sight, and that's not what you decided, then you're going to feel pretty defeated. And that's not the point of the guardrails. The guardrails are there to empower you to make good choices. Check my notes here. So a few more things. Let me see. I think I'm going to move on the slides, and then we'll talk about that during general tips. General tips during this holiday season. Don't decorate with food. I don't know about you, but I've been to a lot of places where there's super cute little candy bowl that, in fact, I have one, and it has snowmen around it, and it looks like a giant red and white peppermint. It's the cutest thing. And the idea is to fill it with candy or some kind of festive holiday food. But if that's sitting out on your counter, chances are every time you walk by, you're going to grab a handful, or you're going to want a little bit more, or something's going to happen that just keeps you munching. And you don't need to do that. So don't decorate with food. Put something else in that little bowl that's cute and festive, maybe some cinnamon potpourri, and your house will smell fantastic, but you're not going to be munching on it. Establish your food guardrails ahead of time, just like we talked about. Stick to your normal eating schedule. A lot of times we get in this pattern when we know we're going to be eating a lot at an event where we won't hardly eat anything earlier in the day. And that actually sets us up to eat more and make poorer choices. So if you have a normal breakfast and a normal lunch, then when you establish those food guardrails for that evening night out, you're going to be more in control because you're not going to be starving and you're not going to be like anticipating all the food. Have a small protein snack before you go. Oftentimes protein is missing in these kind of events. There's lots of crackers and cheese and little tiny pieces of meat, or, lots of things like pigs in a blanket, or you know what I mean. Holiday food is not a protein rich kind of food. So have a little something before you go, take the edge off your hunger, and that can help you stay more in control. Kind of along the same lines, if you're at a holiday event, eat your protein and vegetables first. Oftentimes there's a veggie tray. So even if there's not a lot of protein options, eat your vegetables first. High volume, low calorie, high nutrient density. You're going to feel pretty satisfied. And then you can enjoy a little bit of all those special treats without going overboard. Don't get trapped in the all or nothing thinking. We do this all the time with food. It's like, I can't have any of it, and I'm going to just, grit it out and use all my willpower, and I'm not having it. Or because I had a few bites, I'm just going to go hog wild and eat all the stuff. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can find that happy balance. Again, your food guardrails will help you with that, and you can be in control. So whatever you decide, whether you decide that you're just going to enjoy whatever's being served and you're not going to worry about it, or if you decide you've set some parameters around what you're going to do, enjoy it. Food is meant to be enjoyed. Food is not just fuel. Food is also how we socialize, how we interact with other people, and it tastes good. Like, we can't deny the fact that it's just good. So enjoy the food that you have. During the stressful time, don't neglect movement and fitness. You might feel like you don't have time, but really you don't have time not to, because you'll benefit so much from moving your body a little bit every day. Even if it's just a 15-minute walk a couple of times a day, you'll benefit from that. And it'll also be a great de-stressor. Focus on family and friends, not food. Sometimes the holidays are the only time that we see extended family or certain friends. And we get so caught up in the food that's like we forget about the fact that we can just enjoy one another. And it doesn't need to be about the food. Another great strategy or tip is to have some accountability. Like, if you really, really struggle with this, get some accountability to help you make good choices. And then celebrate those wins when you've made good choices. Again, it's not about deprivation. It's about being in control of the decisions you're making. I recently heard this little tip, and I thought it was so clever and smart, is have open and closed kitchen hours. If the kitchen's open from 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., and that's when you eat, okay, eat during that time. And if it's closed at 8:30 and at 9 o'clock, you just get these little cravings for something, you know what? The kitchen's closed. So you just don't go back in there. And then open the kitchen for lunch and open the kitchen for dinner. Set some parameters around your kitchen. Another way to enjoy what we eat is to slow down and avoid distraction. There have been so many studies done that people who eat in front of the TV or with their phone in their hand, scrolling, or with their computer in front of them, mindlessly eat a larger number of calories. So just avoid those distractions. Be intentional when you eat. Slow down. It takes about 20 minutes for your brain to realize that you've given yourself some food and for it to signal that, hey, I'm pretty satisfied. You know, you can eat a lot of food in 20 minutes, or you can eat a little bit of food in 20 minutes. And either way, your brain's going to send that signal. So slow down, enjoy your food, avoid distractions. Another good tip is pay attention to those hunger cues. I put up here a few minutes ago the difference between physical and psychological hunger. That's a 4-page handout that you will get as a resource to learn more about how to tune into your hunger cues. Some specific tips revolving around parties are, it's really easy when we cook, and I even do this just in the evenings if I'm cooking dinner. My husband has pointed it out to me, and it's been very helpful and insightful, is oftentimes we consume about an entire meal's worth of calories while we cook. It's a little taste here. It's checking if this is good. It's, I'm eating some carrot sticks while I'm chopping vegetables. And you can say, well, the carrots are healthy. It doesn't matter. But 40 minutes later, and I'm cooking and chopping and tasting, and all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, I've eaten a whole meal's worth of food and all of my little bites and tastes. So being aware of that and just not allowing that little habit to be nurtured can help you control overall eating. Okay, looking at my notes here to make sure I don't forget anything. Another general tip, it's more like just something to be aware of. Your environment is always going to be stronger than your willpower. So if you have, cookies and cakes and goodies all around you with this intention of, I'm just not going to give in to any of that, you're fooling yourself. Not that you can't do it, but what a miserable way to be existing and to be fighting against those desires and those wants because they're right in front of you. So change your environment. Change your environment to match the goals that you have. Now, say you've got kids in the house or grandkids, and they want those little snacks and they want chips and they want those things, and there's nothing wrong with them having those things. But if it sets you up for failure, then you need to figure out how you want to handle that. And a good way to do that maybe is, instead of the big family size bag of chips, you buy individual bags and you put them in a bin and they sit in the pantry. And if you just really want those chips, and the idea is, we're not going to deprive ourselves, because deprivation leads to binging, leads to people just going crazy. Have one small bag. You're much less likely to overeat, but you'll satisfy that desire versus pulling out that big bag and all of a sudden half the bag is gone. You can always pull out that bag, put a portion in a bowl, put the bowl back, but the reality is that's just not what we do. And so if we get honest with ourselves, set ourselves up for success. And there's lots of little things like that you can do. Be creative. Think about ways that you can keep the people in your family happy, but also set up your environment in a way that doesn't sabotage you. Okay, let's see. What else? I think we talked about this earlier. It may not be on this list, but it's super important. Oh, it is on the list. Stick to your normal eating schedule. Same thing with the day after a holiday. You don't have to make up for eating food by being hungry the next day. Just get back right into your normal groove. And no guilt, no stress, no shame. You enjoyed the holiday, you're back into your normal pattern. It really is that simple, because we want to be out of the diet mentality. We want to be out of the all or nothing thinking, and we want to have a healthy relationship with food and just feel good. If you're punishing yourself by hardly eating the next day, you're going to feel pretty crappy. You're going to mentally and emotionally feel crappy, and just physically, you're not going to feel good if you don't eat. eating a bunch of calories one day doesn't mean the next day you don't have any need for food. So moving on, we do